Welcome to the 2012 Fusion Podcast, presented to you by the Oregon Ministry Network. Fusion took place November 8th through 10th at People's Church in Salem. The following workshop, entitled Dealing with Parents, was brought to us by Dwaine Richards.
All right, so we're going to be talking about dealing with parents. So I found this quote, Mark DeVries. I'm not really sure who this guy is, but he wrote a book. He said, doing youth ministry without parents is like driving a car without an engine. And I thought he was right. His book, if you want to check it out, Family-Based Youth Ministry. Pretty good book. Read it. I don't quite agree with everything he has, but one of the things that he really brings out is being a youth pastor that ministers to families, okay? And I don't think this is something that we do often enough, and we don't take into account students have parents. It's kind of like, why do we have youth pastors? We have youth pastors because parents have kids and they want someplace to go. Well, we also, now youth ministry has grown to such a thing that I think everybody in here would agree, and you probably have people in your youth group who are students that come to your youth group, but they don't come to your church. They don't come on Sunday mornings. They don't have parents that go to your church. It's just them. And so we kind of have to reverse tech this. We have to go back the other way. Why do we minister to parents? Because students have parents. They have parents that don't go to church. They have parents that aren't associated with anything. And what you might be telling them is different than what their parents are telling them. So, how do we deal with parents? And so you might have been coming thinking, I'm going to fix everything and tell you how to deal with all those difficult parents that you have. But we're going to talk about us first. What can we do as youth pastors to deal with parents? See if I can work my technology. So, first thing I would tell you guys is get over yourself. Okay? Get over yourself. And what I mean by that, I don't mean it to sound so cutting as it sounds, but I do want, we need to get over our own insecurities. Okay? Our own pride issues. Maybe you're young. Okay? How many people here are under 30? Not me, but okay. How many of you guys have kids that are in high school? So some of these things come into play when we're dealing with parents. Okay, especially when I was a young guy. When I put this workshop together, I was kind of thinking, what would I tell myself when I was 23 years old? When I got my first youth group, 23 years old, what would I tell myself on how to deal with parents? Because a lot of times parents look down. Okay, I'm a 23-year-old kid. What am I going to tell you? Okay, it's like me going to Bubs. Hey, Bubs, I got my senior in high school. He's doing this and this and this. What do I do? He's like, well, I've heard. Okay, because he doesn't have an 18-year-old. Now you might, but we have something else. You guys know students. Okay, you know those students. You know who they are. Okay, you can also give a perspective. Don't try and be what you're not. But the main idea here is get past your insecurity about that. Okay, acknowledge with parents, like, you're right, I don't have kids. But let me tell you about what I know about your kid. Okay, let me tell you about what he's dealing with, what he's maybe not telling you. And we're going to get into a little bit of that in a minute. Don't hide from conflict with parents. When a parent comes at you with something, okay, students, maybe it's something you've done, don't hide from that. This is probably one of my biggest failures when I was younger. Man, I hid from parents. Okay, especially when I knew that I was on the wrong end of it. Okay, that I had done something silly, done something crazy, or when I just flat out knew I didn't have an answer. Okay? Don't pretend to know everything. You don't have to know all the answers. Okay? So get past the we're all know-it-alls. Okay? That I'm a professional and I've done this for all of, at that point in my life, like 10 minutes. It's kind of how it felt. I'd done this for a very short amount of time. And I tried to kind of put off like I knew more than I did. And it doesn't work. Just stay with what you know. Okay, I know your student. I know he's struggling with this. You can always encourage your parents. So get over yourself. Here's one thing. Pastors have a great responsibility to preach and teach God's word to God's people, including youth. But the only command regarding the training and discipling of children is given directly to parents. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Ephesians 6:4. This doesn't mean that there's no place for youth, for church to have youth ministry apart from parents, but it does mean that youth ministry must be built on this foundation. When I read that, what I hear is, it's not my job to disciple and train students. Okay? Parents don't come and drop off their student and I disciple and train them. It's my job to help parents disciple and train their students. Okay? We don't take over. They don't drop them off there and we just like, oh, okay, well, I'll take care of this. I'll teach them everything they need to know about God. I'll teach them everything they need to know about morals and what is right and what is wrong. Now, that's a parent's job. It's our job to come alongside them and train them and teach them how to do this also in agreement with our parents. And sometimes parents come from different backgrounds. Okay, parents have different things that they've heard. The second part is stop building a ministry and minister. Now again, I don't want this to come off so harsh. But I'm not saying don't build a ministry. But sometimes we're so concerned with building the ministry that we forget to minister to people. Don't do that. Don't put the ministry above the people that you're ministering to. Because otherwise, what good is it? And that includes parents. I've had parents come to me ever since I've started doing this. Parents come to me with questions because they're overmatched. Think about it. They have a kid who's into this, that, and we know the culture. We spend a lot of time getting to know that culture of students. We spend a lot of time getting to know the music and the movies and the things that they're into. Parents don't often know what's going on with that. But how much time do we spend getting to know their parents? How much time do we spend getting to know who the people are that they're spending the most time with? And we can help parents out. We can back them up. Okay? When a kid comes and says, I wish my dad was as funny. I wish my dad was as cool as you are. I wish my dad was as neat as you. Okay? And I'm not going to lie, I've had kids tell me that before. And I've kind of taken it, sometimes I've taken it, it's like, yeah, I am pretty cool. Look at me. But think about the other end of that statement. What's that tell a parent? If he's telling you this, what do you think that student has told his parents? I wish you were more like my youth pastor. Dwaine wouldn't do that. That puts you at odds with parents. Parents don't want to be uncool. Parents don't want to be the jerk. Back up your parents. Okay, give them support. When a kid comes at you and tells you my parents are this, my parents are that, man, back up your parents. Get to know them. They need help. So support them. Find ways to get to know parents, not just the students. How many of you guys would run a children's ministry or a youth ministry and not get to know your students? Wouldn't that be the craziest thing ever? I'm just going to sit back here in the back. I'm going to preach some. I'm not going to get to know their names. I'm not going to get to know their needs. I'm just going to administrate this. How well do you think that would work? I don't know. I mean, I'm not that kind of guy, so maybe it works great for some people. I don't know. But I can't really envision that working. And so how can we minister to kids? How can we minister to parents if we don't know them? We don't know their names. Think for a second about your youth ministry. How many parents do you know? And I'd imagine it's probably the ones that go to church. But what about the kids who come and they just come on Wednesdays and their parents don't come to church? How many of them do you know? Do you know their name? Because that's the first start. That's the first step. Get to know them. Get to know their name. Okay, get to know them so that you can be trusted, so that they will trust what you say. The National Study of Youth and Religion reports that evidence clearly shows that the single most important social influence on the religious and spiritual lives of adolescents is their parents. Okay? Hear that. The single most important social influence on the religious and spiritual lives of adolescents is their parents. That should hit home, because it's our job. We're, as youth pastors, as children's pastors, we want to influence their spiritual lives. And I know that I've preached on music, and I've preached on friends, and I've preached on movies and what's being put into you. But the single most important influence is parents. How much time are we spending getting to know that single most important influence in our students' lives? Some of us might be, I don't know, as audacious to say as, well, it's me. I'm the single most important influence on their lives. It's really not. As much as, even my own example, when I was growing up, me and my dad used to fight constantly. Constantly. And I was like, I'm not going to be like you when I grow up. Guess what? I get mad like him. I say things like him. My wife sits there and is like, oh, nice way to go, John. I became like my dad. But at the same time, who can blame me? I lived with the man for 18 years. For my first 18 years, for my formative years, of course I'm going to be like the guy. I'm like my mom too. Okay? Whereas how much time do you think, the most time that we could spend with a student, maybe a few hours a week? Maybe? If we're maybe on a missions trip, we get to spend an entire week with them, or we go on a camp or something, we get to spend a weekend. But it pales in comparison to how much time they spend with their parents. Okay? So get to know that influence. Get to know that influence. That way you kind of know what you're up against. And it brings into light things that your students are doing. You're like, oh, that totally makes sense now. I see why they're like that. Oh, I see why he's got anger issues, or I see why he's got a potty mouth. I see, whatever. Okay? You're going to be like, oh, it'll put a perspective. Instead of just being frustrated by it, instead of just being angry with it, you'll be able to do something about it. We try so hard to be cool and fun and relevant. We know the lingo, try to be hip. But we need to, I'm not saying ignore those things, but we need to put as much effort into getting to know parents. The more you know them, the more they know of you, the safer they're going to feel. The parents are. The safer they're going to feel with you. How many kind of like parents look at you and go like, who is this guy? Who is this? Who's this weirdo that's going to take my kid away for a weekend? Okay? The more they know you, the less trouble they're going to cause. Support their decisions. Make parents primary focus. Forgot my little slides here. Support them and their decisions. Support parents' decisions. Students are going to come to you and they are going to play you like divorced parents. I've seen this so many times. And you guys have probably seen it too. The daughter whose parents are divorcing, she goes to her dad and says, Dad, I want this. And then, he won't do it, so she goes to her mom and plays her dad against her mom until one of them gives her what she wants. Okay? It can be a boy too, it doesn't matter. It's not just girls that do that. But they kind of play against each other. They'll do the same with you. Support parents. Unless it's flat out unscriptural, and they're like, hey, my dad wants me to kill somebody. Okay, well, that's bad. You probably shouldn't do that. But that's not the case. That's not what we hear oftentimes. What it is, they come at us with a problem. My parents won't let me date until I'm 16. Okay, don't do that. Because Scripture says to honor your parents and to obey them. I had a situation in one of my church, two parents. It was like, two parents. One set of parents comes up and is like, we want to know what your opinion of dating is. And the other parents, they heard that and they turned around and was like, yeah, now that you mention it, this was a question we had as well. And these parents were like, well, we don't want our daughter dating until she's 16. And the daughter's like, And these parents are like, well, we don't mind our daughter dating, but what's your rule on dating? And I turned to both of them. It's like, my rule on dating is whatever your rule on dating is. And they're like, it can't be both. And I'm like, well, sure it can. And I said, and I didn't even know the girls' names. And I was like, if your daughter comes to me and says, my parents' rule about dating is dumb, and I don't want, how can I make them? I'm going to tell her, your parents' rule is your parents' rule. And you need to follow that. You need to obey that. And if your daughter comes and says, hey, I'm dating, well, I'm going to talk to her about how she should date, who she should date maybe and how she's going to pick these guys. But that's your rule, and I'm going to support that. I'm not going to tell you shouldn't date. You should totally ignore your parents and date. It's your rule. I'm here to support you guys, support those rules. And you can do that. You can easily support a parent. It's not your rule. It's our job to support them. So when kids come, they come to us and they want us to say something, okay? Because they're not looking for you to agree with their parents. They're looking for ammo. They're looking for something they can take home and go, ha, this is what Dwaine said. Dwaine said this, and it's totally against what you said. What do you say about that? Okay? Don't put yourself there. Okay? Support what parents say. Assume the best about their decisions. Assume the best about parents. And this sometimes can be a pretty hard thing. But this begins with assuming that parents love their kids. They do. And they might show it in funny ways. Okay? We might not agree with it, but parents love their kids. They do. All of them do. I have yet to meet a parent who doesn't love their kids, who doesn't profess that love. Now, there's other things that come in. How was that parent raised? How were they shown love? What's their understanding of love? Do they go to church? Do they have an accurate biblical representation of what love is? What it means to sacrifice? They may not. And when you start learning that, you realize, wow, they do love their kids, but it's in a very messed up way. It's in almost a manipulative way sometimes. But you can say, all parents love their kids. Support that. Okay, support that with the kids. They love their kids. When you give them answers, when you can't support something, okay, when you can't just flat out say, yes, that's right, be diplomatic about it. Okay, I avoid at all costs saying that a parent is wrong. Okay, I always try to lead the student to an understanding of what their mom or their dad is trying to do. What are they trying? They might be doing it in a bad way, but again, assume that they love their kids, because they do, and try to understand. And the more you get to know them, if you do the other things and get to know parents, get to know their names, get to know the backgrounds, and you can talk to parents, the easier that becomes. That becomes, oh, I know your parents. This doesn't sound right. When a kid comes to you and tells you that their parents this, that, da, 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 da. Wait a second. I just talked to your mom the other day. This is left field, man. You know, and kids will do that. Okay, kids will tell you the story that is convenient for you to hear, that makes them right, that you're going to get the answer, give them the answer that they want you to give. So to support decisions. Don't be flaky or crazy with parents. Okay? It's one thing to have this persona with students. See, what students want, or maybe even kids want, in a children's pastor or in a youth pastor, they want crazy, million miles an hour, hair on fire. He's so funny. He'll do anything. He'll jump from a skyscraper into a little Dixie cup full of glass, water or something. That's what kids want. They like, I'm 41, okay? Just so you guys know, I'm old now. I am like, thank you, for effect. But I'm 41. I lost all my cool 10 years ago, okay? I mean, I really did. But here's the thing. All of the students in my youth ministry think I'm the most insane person around. I don't really do a whole lot to promote this. Kids want their youth pastor to be the crazy guy. They want that. So they look for avenues for me being crazy and being weird, and they'll just run with it. Okay? I'm not. I'm not an insane, crazy person. I try to have fun with them. I play dodgeball with them, try and murder them and that stuff. But in dodgeball. And I'll have fun, and so I am fun, but I'm not that crazy insane. When I was 23, though, I was totally that guy. And I always wondered why parents looked at me kind of weird. You're going to take you're like 5 minutes older than my kid, and I'm going to let you go whitewater rafting with them? Do you know how to swim? They're asking me all these questions. And I'm like, dude, what's the problem, Mom? Come on, let's go. Get with the program. I'm trying to run a youth ministry here. This is going to be fun. And you know what they're thinking? You're going to drown my kid. You're going to lose him. I don't trust you as far as I could throw you. So I was lighter then. They could probably throw me a little farther. But with parents, don't be that guy. You have to have two personas. Because what parents want is safe. They want someone trustworthy. They want someone who's going to protect their kid. They want someone who's going to teach their kid. And so you have to have these two different personas. Let the kids think you're crazy. But when parents are there, when you're talking to parents, don't be flaky. When you say, hey, you know what, we're going to be back at 9 o'clock, be back at 9 o'clock. Be back at 8:55. Okay, and if you're not sure you can be back at 9 o'clock, you say, we're going to be back at 11 o'clock and show up at 10. Okay? Be early. Don't be late. Because when the kids come back, why were you late? Oh, well, Pastor Dwaine was running back and forth in the middle of I-5. It was hilarious. No. It was, but no. Okay? Sometimes you're going to have to pass up on those opportunities. And we want to do that like, you know what, the kids will think this is great. And the parents just wait a little while. No. Parents have lives. They have jobs. Okay? And you keeping them up later, you keeping them waiting, it shows a lack of respect for what they do and who they are. Be on time. This is just a simple thing. I'm a youth pastor for, 16, 17 years now. Okay? I've been late. Some of it's legit and some of it was just because, well, we were having fun. Okay? But not these days. When I say I'm going to be, I'll go extra and come back early. It's much easier to you can add in an extra hour. Hey, we're going to be back at 11. And if you show up at 10:30, you're a hero. People are like, yeah, but if you say I'm going to be back at 10 and you show up at 10:30, you're a jerk. Okay? And then, why? Okay? Be trustworthy. Be a person who they want to put their kids with it. You know what? Man, Bubs, he's trustworthy. I know he's going to protect my daughter or my son. I know he's going to look out for him. We were going on a trip with junior hires. This is absolutely insane. Probably wouldn't do it again. But we went on a trip with junior hires, 45 of them, to Los Angeles for a week and came back. Okay? Yeah. It was so much fun, though. It really, really was. But I had a couple of dads who came. They weren't part of the church. And I was going over the rules, and the kids had to be there, and the parents had to be there. And these dads they weren't sure. They were like, okay, if they've been coming to church, and it was a contest thing, that was the winning deal. But I was going over I said, guys, don't be late. Okay, and I was telling kids, because we break up, and we have teams, and they would be able to go around, and I was telling students, don't be late. Okay? Because 1 minute late, and I'm irritated. 5 minutes late, and I'm mad. 10 minutes late, and I'm hunting you down. I said, we're in Los Angeles. I was like, I will flat out kill somebody if I can't find them. I said, and I will kill somebody if I think they're taking you. I said, this is no laughing matter. And these dads were like, right on, because how would you, if I thought my son was lost and I was afraid someone had taken him, dude, there's body parts flying, okay? And I look at, like you guys, I look at these students, they're my kids. They're not just kind of my kids and I like them, they're all right. Yeah, well, lost one, but I got 38 others. No, I'm going to take some. And so with these dads, the kids were kind of like, oh, here he goes with the rules again. But the parents were like, yeah, okay, I want to protect their kids. When we go driving places, we don't 65, okay, maybe 70. But it's not 95, ever, okay? Because that's going to get back to a parent. Dwaine is doing 130 miles an hour. I was not doing 130 miles an hour, okay? But it gets back, and it always gets exaggerated, okay? Don't be that crazy, flaky person, okay? Even if that means when you're young and you have to fake it, okay? Get up, put a suit and tie on, whatever you need to do, okay? Look responsible. Be responsible. Don't go up to mom and like, the shizzle, mama, what's up? And she's going to be like, okay, let's go, okay? Talk like a normal person, okay? You can do all the rest of the stuff with the kids, okay? Don't be flaky. Be intentional. What I mean by be intentional is have a purpose for what you do in your events, okay? Why would mom or dad want to give up time out of their day or their evening to get kids to and from something and pay money, and when what are we doing here? Oh, we're just hanging out, messing around. Okay, like my time's important. Be intentional with your events, but also be intentional with how you talk to parents. Hunt them down. Not all parents are easy. I had this one parent, one of my church. The guy would literally walk out with his daughter started coming to our church, got really involved, And he would sit there with the window up. I would walk out and I'm like, most people would roll down their windows, but he just kind of sat there. And I just started walking out, and every day I'd sit there and he'd keep the window up. He did not want to talk to me. I'd just wave, and finally about 3 months in, he waved back. It's like, how you doing? And that kind of became the thing for a while. We just waved. And one day I came out, and he was actually outside of his car. And I said, hi. And I went up to him and stuck out my hand. I'm Dwaine. It's nice to meet you. And you could just see this guy kind of like I was going to pull some like judo Pentecostal thing on him or something. I don't know. But he goes, I shook his hand. It's like, nice to meet you. What's your name? And he's like, gave me his name. All right. And I walked out. Just left it at that. I wasn't pushing for like his whole entire life. But eventually, he got to where we could talk. Be intentional. Hunt parents down. Okay? They're not going to hunt you down. It's your job to hunt them down. Just like a visitor, if a visiting student came into your youth group, would you wait for them to come to you? I'm not going to go to them. Whatever. They can come to me. I don't know about the rest of you, but I hunt them down. Hey, I don't know you. What's your name? And they're kind of like, sometimes they're weirded out because I'm big and bald, and they're like, and they tell me their name because they're scared I'm going to beat them up. But the thing is, I hunt them down. I every time a visitor comes, if I don't know their name, and sometimes it's like the second week, but I hunt them down. I was like, I don't know your name. What's your name? So when you see a parent, you should do the same thing. Hunt them down. Hey, I'm Dwaine. I'm the youth pastor. I'm the one spending a whole lot of time with your son or daughter. That's an important thing. And in our society and our culture, I remember when my parents would not let me go to a friend's house unless they met my friend's mom. Anybody remember that? Anybody remember those days? My parents were fanatical freaks, especially if you compare them to today. Now it's like parents are like, whatever, just go, get away, And they don't have to, but we need to hunt them down. Be intentional about building those relationships. Be intentional also about what you say to parents. Tell them something good about their parent. I remember, this was just a few months ago, I had this kid, Josh. Josh cuts himself. He's a 7th grader. He's a big 7th grader. He cuts himself. They've got him on all kinds of drugs and stuff. And this is how he came to our group. The cops had to show up, and he and 3 friends had to hold, his brother's 3 friends and his mom had to hold him down while the cops had put him in the back. He was a 6th grader at the time. I mean, he was all sorts of trouble. At least this is what I hear. Josh starts coming to youth group. He's coming to youth group. Josh is a great kid. I don't know any of this other stuff. Josh is coming to youth group. He's a great kid. Friendly, nice, funny. He told me a little bit. He's like, yeah, I saw these marks on his arm. And I asked him, like, what's that about? And he's like, well, he goes, right now, he goes, those are just scabs. He goes, but I cut myself sometimes. I was like, all right, and I was like, but you're not doing that now? And he goes, no, I'm just picking at the scabs. I was like, all right. And so we'd play dodgeball. He loves basketball. He loves the Blazers. Just, like I said, he's a great kid. So I meet his mom. And she's like, I said, nice to meet you. And it's like, you're Josh's mom. He's like, yeah. She's like, he really likes coming here. I was like, we really like having him. And she goes, oh, he's having some trouble. I was like, Josh is? She goes, yeah. It's like, are you kidding me? She goes, no. I was like, that's amazing. She goes, why? I was like, he's never any trouble here. He's a great kid. He does everything we want. And she just starts bawling. And I'm kind of like, what? What's going on? And then she tells me the rest of the story about the police hauling her son off, about the drugs that he's on, the psycho things that he's doing, and just how worried she is. And I was like, that doesn't sound like Josh to me. And she's like, again, she's tears in her eyes. She goes, you don't know how happy I am to hear that. He has so much trouble at school. The teachers are calling me all the time about how much trouble he's getting in fights. Because you're the first person that's ever said that he's a great kid. And I'm like, he is a great kid. So last night I went to his football game. Last week, me and Josh are sitting in the car, and he goes, hey, Pastor Dwaine, I'm off all the drugs. And I was like, what? And he goes, all those drugs they were giving me, he goes, I haven't taken them in a month. He goes, I'm off. He goes, Zolox and Zolpidem and all that other stuff. They had him on like this medicine cabinet full of stuff. And he was so happy about that. He goes, you don't understand how this makes me feel. And I was like, man, that's really good news. So I'm sitting there next to his mom at the football game last night, and she goes, thank you. And I was like, for what? She goes, for coming to his game. He's been talking about you. You said that you were going to be at this game. at the beginning of the season because it was a night game. And she goes, "Thanks for coming. He's been talking about this for weeks." And I'm like, again, you don't know this stuff. You don't know. But talk to them. Tell them how great their kid is. Some of them might not have a clue how good their kid is. And they might come and act one way at church and they act some totally different way at home. And I can't get this lady to stop calling me now. She's always like, because she thinks I'm awesome. She thinks the youth group is awesome. She wants to know how she can help, what she can do, if anybody needs a ride. Okay, so be intentional. Tell them something good about your kids. One of my favorite things to do is when we go on a trip, I take my phone and now Facebook, I'll post pictures of me and their kid. I'll just post them on my Facebook page. And now I got parents that are on my Facebook page because they want to see their kids. And I'll just post a picture of me and them doing something, me and them doing something else. I was trying to make it me and because it's also, they like to do it and they'll post it to their page and stuff like that. But be intentional about building these relationships. Because the bumper sticker might say that it's accidental, beauty's do practice random acts of kindness and accidental. What's that bumper sticker? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Practice random acts of kindness and senseless beauty. Kindness is never random, and beauty is never senseless. Okay? People put that together. Okay? Kindness is an intentional thing. It might be random to the person who received it, but the person who did it, it was an intentional act. Okay? Be intentional. When you do this, be there when they call. And people will call. As you get to know parents, you are going to be on their call list when emergencies happen, when someone dies, okay, when everything goes crazy at school and someone gets in a fight, when things come up. You're going to be that first call. When I was 23, man, I hated those calls. I didn't like going to the hospital. What am I going to do? Just be there. Don't worry about so much what you're going to do. I couldn't find the right word. Don't just go there. Go there with a fireman's attitude. Okay? Think about how firemen enter a building. And when you get a phone call, this is like an alarm sounding. You should rush into the building. Firemen don't run up to the building and go, I don't like fire. Which is kind of what I used to do when I went to a hospital. I didn't like hospitals. They freaked me out. I'm like, I don't know what to do. But it'd be like stand outside. Can you imagine a fireman with a fire hose standing there like, okay. When we go into situations like that, we go in, and people can read that off of us. They can read how unsure we are. They can read how uneasy we are. Pray before you go, and then go. Smile. Be happy. Maybe not happy for the situation, but be encouraging. Okay? It's going to be okay. Be the person that tells them it's going to be okay. Pray for them. Don't feel awkward. You were called for a reason. Okay? You weren't called because you were some random guy. You were called because you're their kid's youth pastor. They expect you to pray for them. They expect you to give Bible verses. They expect you to be spiritual. Don't go and try not to be, which is what I used to try and do. I wanted to try and fit in to No, they were expecting me to be a pastor. Go and pastor them. Okay? It might make them feel, they don't know. But be confident in who you are. Okay? As a fireman going into a place, they have tools, they have axes, and they bust up walls and throw water around. They know what they're doing. Okay? Same thing. You might not be used to doing that, but go in with confidence. It's probably the word I was looking for, but I couldn't find it then. Ask your pastor for help. Okay? Particularly with the church families. Ask your pastor for help getting to know people. Okay? How do I get to know them? Maybe there's a particular family and you're trying to get in with them. How do I get in with these guys? They're weird. I don't know. It's like I'm really into sports. And then you got this family that's totally into like crafts. I don't know. I don't do beadwork. I don't know. Where's the connection? Where's a connection that I can make with these guys? Talk to your pastor about people. Get some help with that. Your pastor is an important person to keep involved in any situation before it becomes an emergency. Everybody knows to talk to your pastor when it becomes an emergency. Oh, these people are going to, hey, pastor, you might be getting a phone call. It's usually a good idea to involve him maybe before that happens. Okay? So this is before that happens. Ask your pastor for help getting to know people. If your pastor knows them, any insight he might be able to give into the situation. Okay? Share information. Okay? This isn't like Homeland Security not talking to the FBI. Okay? Share information. Tell him what you know so he can make a connection with him too. He's their pastor. Okay? So he can pray for him. This will probably cover just about 90% of the people. Okay? And next we come up to the abnormal part. Crazy people. Okay? And everybody in here probably has, it's like, oh, he's talking about so-and-so. Okay? Everybody in here has that person. It's like, oh, yeah. Okay? Crazy people. And what I mean by crazy people is the difficult ones. Okay? They're outside of the norm. All right? Wherever I've gone, every church I've been to has been crazy people. I'm not talking about you. Okay? Don't get all... But crazy people, and when I say that, this is my term for people I can't get my head around. Okay? I don't understand where they're coming from. And maybe they are off. Maybe they go to the church and they say weird things. Maybe it's some of it's not biblical. But for whatever reason, they're after you. Okay? Every church that I've been at, there's been at least one person who's been after me. It's like, I can't do anything right. Okay? So, a couple of hints. Stop digging. Okay? Stop digging. And what I mean by stop digging is, I liken this to my wife. So, I get myself in a hole, and I try and get myself out of the hole. Right? What happens? All the guys in here know what's going on. You're just digging it deeper. Okay? And at some point you realize that you know what you're digging this hole for? Your own body. Okay? You're going to be in that hole and the dirt is just going to come in over you. You're digging your own grave is what you're digging. And so sometimes with crazy people, you just have to stop digging. Okay? Stop the argument. If they're coming at you and you're like, you know what? I'm not going to win. Just stop arguing. Stop digging. Stop fighting. Okay? Stop talking to them about it. You know, we've been over this. Okay? We're not going to do this anymore. Change the subject. Okay? You can do it diplomatically. But don't tell them, you're wrong. We're not going to talk about it anymore. I'm leaving. That doesn't help either. Okay? But in whatever thing that you are at odds over, find something else. Stop digging. Talk to your senior pastor. Okay? And this, if you do it beforehand, this will be much easier. Okay? Because then your senior pastor knows what's going on. I remember getting a phone call from one of my senior pastors, and he's like, calls me and he says, "Did you make fun of cancer today?" I'm like, "Yeah, because that's hilarious. You know, I mean, that's funny stuff right there." And he goes, "Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. But just," he goes, "did you say something?" And I was like, "Yeah." I said, "You know, we talked about praying for it." And I said, I used an example, one of the girls, and I said, "Oh, well, you got cancer, let's say." And everybody kind of laughed at that because all of a sudden, bow, she has cancer. I said, "But I was talking about praying for it." He's like, "Oh, well, that makes sense." And I was like, "Okay." But we'd already talked. We had discussions about this person. We'd had discussions about this stuff beforehand. So he wasn't surprised. He wasn't taken aback. He wasn't like, "Oh, what's going on?" No, this was... He already had my back before he even called me. He just called me to let me know. But we had already had this discussion. But if you haven't, talk to your pastor. Okay? Because there's nothing worse than your pastor being blindsided by something that you're involved in. Senior pastors hate that. So I'm told many times. Okay? They really don't like it. So talk to your pastor. Even if it's nothing ever comes of it, tell him anyways. Hey, you know what? This might be a problem. Okay? They'll appreciate that. Even if it means, you're like, I'm going to tell him something, and then he's just going to think I'm irresponsible. And no. Okay? He's going to assume that you're getting ahead of the game. Learn to say no. Okay? Learn to tell crazy people no. Okay? You can learn. This is a good thing to learn to tell anybody no. But sometimes people will come to you, and this is kind of a different topic, and we'll save it for another day, but will come to you with, "Hey, you know, we should do this, or we should do this, or we should do this." You know, everybody has an awesome idea, right? And you got to learn to say no. I'm sorry, but that's not where we're going. That's not the direction that we're heading in. It gets easier for me now that when I have a purpose, because if it doesn't fit that purpose, it's easy to say no. That doesn't fit the purpose. Then I can tell them about the purpose. It gets harder sometimes when we don't have a purpose. But when something comes at you and you're like, I don't think so. Okay? Learn to say no. Be firm but not mean. Okay? If that means you have to say no, and they keep coming at you like, I'm sorry, no. No, I'm really sorry, no. Okay, you can be as nice and as polite about it, but the answer doesn't have to change. No. Hey, you're so cute, but no. Okay? I used to practice, this is going to sound silly, but I used to practice on my 2 younger kids. No, you can't have that. And they're like, and they want whatever they want, and they're like 18 months old. Okay? You got a new baby daughter. Practice on her. No, you can't do that. I don't do it quite like that because people think you're weird. But you can be as nice as you want and still hold on to the firmness of the answer. Okay? Be firm, but not mean. And not just in saying no, but also in telling people sometimes what they don't want to hear. Because sometimes these crazy people, they keep coming at you and you've told them, but you got to be firm. And repeat and keep telling them, be firm, but not mean. Don't use their kids. They might use their kids. Mom and dad might use their kid as a football to get back at one another. Don't join that game. Don't use their kids. Don't make them feel guilty about their kids. Don't tell their kids, well, do this or do that, and make their kids players in that game. Okay? Don't use their kids. Because it's oftentimes the crazy people who have kids that do that. Be an example. Bring backup. Okay? For me, this is my wife. Especially if it's going to be a meeting. Hey, we need to meet with you. My wife just happens to be around all the time. And if it can't be my wife, a trusted youth leader. Because what will often happen is it becomes you said, they said. Okay, I wouldn't say he said, she said. It could be a he said. But what they said against what you said. And you're the only 2 people there. And then you have no backup. Okay, protect yourself. Okay, bring backup whenever possible. Bring someone to tell you. They don't even have to talk. Okay, sometimes they can just sit within earshot. I've had this before where I'm sitting we'll be in a room, maybe not quite this big, but I'll be talking. Like me and Bo will be over here talking, and right over there will be my backup. And I talk loud enough to where they can hear. Okay, so that, no, that's not what happened. No punches were thrown. I was in the room. Okay, he did not spit in her face. Okay, that did not happen. You see what I'm saying? Because sometimes, and those might be extreme situations, but bring backup so someone can back you up. Do not avoid. This is probably the thing I was most guilty of. Avoiding people. You irritate me. So I'm going to go over here. And I would avoid parents that bothered me. It's like avoiding people is like playing favorites. I like these ones. I don't like these ones. And so I avoid them. And I avoided not necessarily the person, but I was avoiding the problem because I knew that it was going to come up. Don't avoid. Because if you avoid, the problem gets bigger. You might be keeping it quiet, but they're not. They're going to talk. Go get it. Okay? This is something it's taken me a long. Me in conflict. I hide under the bed. Okay, I am. It's just that's my natural. That was my natural thing when I was younger. People come after me and I would hide. Yes, you're right. No, I didn't know how to say no or anything. No. Learn. Okay, get tough. And when something happens, or if you hear something and you have to go to them, go to them. If you see them coming, okay, you don't have to talk about it, but don't avoid them. If I know that she's got a beef with me and I see her Sunday morning, hey, how you doing? Shake her hand. Be warm and be friendly. Don't avoid. Okay? Do not make rules that everyone has to follow just because you are avoiding these particular parents. Okay? Rules like there can be no parent youth leaders if your student is in youth ministry. Okay? In other words, like no, because they have parents and I don't want them to be involved in youth ministry. So no parent youth leaders. Because I'm going to tell you something. Parent youth leaders are the awesomest youth leaders you can ever get, especially when you're young. Okay, if you're under the age of 28, get a parent youth leader. Get somebody 40 that'll follow you around, back you up. That way, when a parent comes at you and says something, you can that's not the way it happens. I've got these guys over here. They're helping out. They weren't offended by what I said. They got daughters in our youth group. They got sons in our youth group, okay? But don't make random rules to avoid those people becoming part of your youth ministry. Just tell them straight up, I don't think you don't fit what we need for a youth pastor or a youth leader. Just tell them why, okay? It's the hard way right up front, but in the long run, it's the easy way. Dr. Kendrick, president of Salem Bible College, he always uses the example of the right way and the wrong way. And the right way seems uphill at first, and then it's a long, smooth, kind of a downgrade, nice and easy, but it's this really hard uphill right off the bat. The easy way is all downhill, and you're like, yeah, that looks nice. But at the bottom of that downhill is boulders, all sorts of sticks, terrible, terrible path, no path. It's going to cause you trouble, okay? Go tell them nicely, I'm sorry, I don't think you're youth leader material. I'm sorry, we can't do that. Or I'm sorry, but do so friendly, okay? Not mean if you're angry, but friendly.
Thank you for listening to the 2012 Fusion Podcast. For more information on the Oregon Ministry Network and our events, please visit our website at oregonag.org.